Lord Tremendous here. Got another book review for you. This one is called St. Mary's. It's by Simon Vaillancourt, I believe. It is about 150 pages long. It was published May 14th, 2019, and it falls under the suspense, mystery, and suspense thrillers category. I got it on Kindle Unlimited with my subscription, but you can get it for 99 cents on Kindle, in ebook format or whatever, and then $9.99 in paperback form. All on Amazon. The link will be in the description, as always. So, the author reached out to me through Reddit and asked me to review his book, and I don't know the individual. I don't know anything about him. There's nothing on like the author central about him, but I get the impression that this book was written by a teenager. If that's wrong, that's not meant to be an insult. None of these reviews are meant to be insulting or rude, even though I do rant a bit and I get passionate about these things. But again, I'm trying to keep with the integrity. I'm trying to give you the constructive feedback that you're looking for, that you need, and so I'm going to caveat this whole review on that because this book was rough. It was very, very rough. It starts off, I get the feeling that the author doesn't have a good grasp on the English language. I don't know. I'm not trying to be insulting or anything like that. God knows I only speak one language, and I don't really do that very well. But the entire book, it's only 150 pages. But from page 1 to page 150, you couldn't turn to a single page on that book without finding a grammatical, punctuation, syntax, formatting error, and it was constant. It was constant. Almost every sentence had a slew of issues. One very glaring example that happens quite often is dialogue. For example, it would start, begin quote, "We have to get to the car," says Lord Tremendous as he makes his way to the car. End quote. Okay, it was just that level of punctuation errors constantly. Starting sentences with and but and because when it should have just been a comma. That happens constantly throughout the book, and it makes reading it very difficult. It's painful. It's a slog to get through. Oh, if only because of the punctuation, grammatical, syntax, all of that. Also, this book likes to jump around. You primarily read it from the main character's perspective in first person. I went to do this. I found myself doing that. I was going over here. And in the middle of the same sentence, I was going over here as I watched from the side of the door, looking at myself from that. It was that jarring, that bad. It likes to jump from different perspectives all in the same paragraph, and it does it all the time. It gets confusing. I found myself having to go back and reread things just to figure out who the hell was talking or whose perspective I currently was in. Another problem was every bit of dialogue, everyone talked the same. There was the same inflection, the same speech mannerisms. There was no personality in between the individuals. The guys talked the same as the girls. They all had the same type of conversation, type of speaking mannerisms and stuff. It was difficult. The only way you knew you weren't talking, that like the point of view you were reading from wasn't from just some schizophrenic who had very vanilla personalities, was because the author would put, Melissa said this, Simon said that, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, so that's how I was able to follow who was saying what, but their speaking mannerisms and how they talked and the dialogue was the exact same grave, boring dialogue from A to B. The plot in this book is simply put, and I'm going to get into the spoilers. I'll go deeper there, of course. But the plot is there's this individual named Tom, and he ends up in a town that he shouldn't have been able to reach. He was on a train. He fell asleep. When he woke up, the train was completely empty. And now he's in this town. There's absolutely no reason for him to be in this town. There's absolutely no way he could have made it into this town because not only does the train tracks, they haven't been run in over 20 years, but they're decrepit, they're rusted through, and the train station itself is a rickety shack that is just waiting to be pushed over and killed. That's pretty much exactly how the book describes it. That's never explained. You never find out how he got to this town. When he gets to the town, it's very odd. This is all present day, by the way. This is 2019 that this is happening, and this isn't something from back in the day or old timey periods or anything. This is all present day stuff. So he makes it into this town. He's in this town. They don't accept his type of currency. Like this is in America, and he tries to pay for a hotel room. And the guy, he tries to hand him American currency, and the guy is like, we don't take this kind of money. And you find out later why, but it's like, why would he respond like that? Why wouldn't he just say, hey, that kind of currency isn't accepted here. You need to have the kind of currency that is. Although he accepts a check, sure. The plot is so generic, so paper thin that it's insulting in a lot of ways. It really is. There's no mystery, there's no suspense. It's ham-fisted the entire time. There are sex scenes in this, and this is a spoiler, and it's kind of dirty, so if you don't want to listen to it, I'd skip ahead a minute or two. The guy makes it he's in this town. He gets to his room, and he's just met some people in the town, and he's getting a vague idea of what's going on. He's in this town because his mom just died, and he was trying to find his long lost father, who she divulged his location to just before she died, and that's an interesting scenario as well. Anyway, the guy is in his room. He's taking a shower because he needs one. And he's thinking about this guy that he just met and the situation that he's in his town and how he's going to find his dad. And then all of a sudden, I kid you not, he looks down at his bulging penis and decides to rub one out. It's just and it's so ham-fisted and awkward and like kind of creepy that you're like, I don't know if I want to read this anymore. Like I paused, and I'm not a huge prude guy or anything like that, but that gave me pause. I was like, why? What? And so the guy literally masturbates onto his own feet. Yeah. So if that's your fetish, you're going to love that part. But for the rest of us, it comes off as jarring, to say the least. It's not led up to. You don't know what's going on. He's thinking about something completely left field of that. And then all of a sudden he realizes he's got an erection, and he has to handle it right then and there on his feet. Granted, once he starts thinking about a stripper that he saw earlier in the town, and I'll get to that in the spoilers, but that's the kind of situations you find yourself in all the time. It's very ham-fisted, it's jarring, nothing is built up to. It's just whatever the author thought he wanted to write about at the time is what happened in that paragraph. It was painful. A lot of the other stuff is, like I said, the way it's all worded and the way it comes out, the tenses are all wrong. They switch all the time. The word usage is wrong. It uses some big words improperly quite a few times. That's why I believe that this author is younger, and maybe English wasn't his first language. I'm guessing, and I'm not trying to attack here. This is going to be a rough review, but I'm trying to make sure that integrity-based sticks with this page, so I'm sticking with it to the best of my ability. In the end, some really heinous, like weird fetish stuff happens all the time in the book that's just unearned and jarring. The main character is a meek, friendless coward who can also fight, is courageous, and is assertive, but he's also unsure and confused real easily, and he's not used to girls liking him, but he's had an extensive array of sexual partners in his lifetime. He's all over the place. This guy is a jack of all trades and a jack of no trades. It's whatever the author needs him to be. It made me feel like he had no clear concept of what he wanted this character to be. In the end, when you're having the inevitable shootout, which is stupid predictable, by the way, he's suddenly boxing ring MMA fighter. At one point, he's knocked on his back by a big brute of a guy after he gets punched in the face. But while he's on his back, somehow, because of his 8-foot long arms, he's able to punch the guy that hit him in the eye and knock him on the ground. And then he gets up. It's in there. And then he gets up. So, yeah. He's never shot a gun before in his life, but he gets a gun, and he's a natural. Dude is a natural. He's running away, shooting over his shoulder, and he drops a guy that's coming after him. And they're shooting back at him, but you know, he's missed. He takes one to the shoulder because, I'm so rugged, but I'm pushing through. And it's rough. It's rough. It's only 150 pages, and if you get it on ebook format and stuff like that, it's only like $1. So if you're curious, by all means, take a look at it. The link will be in the description. But all in all, I can't really go any deeper without giving huge spoilers. So my rating for this book, unfortunately, is 0 out of 5 stars. I tried really hard to find one thing about this book that I could grab onto, that I enjoyed, that I liked, but it's just, it missed every target it was aiming for. The plot was predictable, the writing was awful, the characters were awful, just everything about this book was wrong, unfortunately, and it needs an editor and a proofreader more than anything. The potential is there. I'll say that. I believe that the potential is there, but the author needs to get an English class and an editor and a proofreader, really, really good ones, and he has to pay that extra money because this book was an editor's nightmare. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm trying to be honest, and I apologize if it's taken the wrong way, but it was really rough to get through this book. 0 out of 5 stars, and I'm going to play an ad real quick, and then I'll get into the spoilers, so buckle up. Everybody knows as a self-published author, it's hard to find a solid group where you can get the answers to all your questions. That's when I found Self-Published Book Groups. It's a Facebook group, and the link is in the description. Totally worth it. Check it out, especially if you're a self-published author. Spoilers coming up, so if you're still here when the music stops, it's on you. Alright, guys and gals, you're still here, so let's get into the spoilers. So the book starts off, and the main character, Tom, who has no friends, no family, other than his mother, who's his favorite person in the whole wide world. I mean, a little creepy level of mommy problems here, but he leaves his job and goes, because his mom has a stroke, so he leaves his job and everything to go take care of her. And of course, she's like, I don't want to be a burden, but it's creepy how much she's into his mom. It doesn't cross a line there. The line is crossed later, but it flirts with it. It's the connection is a little too strong. But anyway, he drops everything and he goes home and he takes care of his mom, and after a few weeks after her stroke and she's not doing well, she asks him to finish her off. She wants to die. It takes him about 12 seconds, and you get that a lot in this book. It's a lot of almost, I'm not sure. The main character is real wishy-washy and a lot of internal struggles where he never really comes to a conclusion, but in a ham-fisted way, he pushes the plot forward. That's both aggravating and unearned. So he gives his mom an overdose of morphine. She dies peacefully, and he runs away. Understandable. The nurse is apparently going to come the next day, and she'll get the police involved because assisted suicide is kind of illegal. Again, this is present day. So he leaves. Before his mom died, she's like, oh, by the way, your biological father, here's a picture of him. And he's like, where is he? Do you know where he's at? And she's like, this is the last place I saw him. He's probably still there because, nobody ever leaves. And yeah, go to this town. This is probably where you'll find him. He's like, bet. Mom's dead. He grabs his stuff and he takes off on a train because he knows the cops are going to come after him. That's the last time you ever have to worry about that, though, because assisted suicide apparently is a very low-ball type of crime that police investigate, especially with a guy that's writing checks to the place that he's staying. So he gets on this train that he pays for with his credit card. You following me? If any of you listening are police officers, I can hear your eyes rolling, and it's deserved. So anyway, the main character, he's on a train and he's heading to this town, right? He bought a ticket to this town. So getting to this town is not impossible. It's not unheard of on this train, right? Anybody could buy this ticket. He falls asleep on the train. When he wakes up, he doesn't have any idea how long he's been out. And when he arrives, or he gets off the train, everyone's gone. The train is dark and there's nobody there. And he's like, that's weird. No explanation. Gets off the train and he's in some weird place. And it looks, the train station looks a little disheveled, and the train tracks are all rusted through and broken. That's odd. But that's it. That's it. Our main character is like, well, I must have the best luck in the world, considering. So he starts walking around. It's a tiny little town, right? That's the way it keeps on being described, but you really get no idea how big this place is. It's as big as the author needs it to be at any given moment. So he finds this hotel, and there's this old crusty dude behind the counter, and he goes, I need a room for the night, maybe two, I don't know, because everything is real. He's real indecisive until the plot gets a hold of him. The guy behind the counter is like, yeah, it's $10 for a night. And the guy's like, cool. He hands him a $10 bill, and the guy goes, we don't accept this kind of currency here. What's wrong with you? Dude was obvious. Like, it says in the book, dude knew he wasn't from town. Like, the book tells you the guy behind the counter knew Tom wasn't from their town. But instead of just being like, hey, dude, you need to have the proper currency in order to work, make this all work and everything like that. We don't accept American currency here for whatever reason, and I'll get to that later. He flips out at him, and dude's like, do you take a credit card? And he's like, no, we don't take none of that plastic newfangled shenanigans. How about a check? Oh, well, yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be quaint. Let's do that. So he writes him a check. For some reason, the check is fine. The check works. Probably because the author realized he wrote himself into a corner and needed some way to pay for this garbage. So he writes a check. The guy gets a room. He immediately decides he needs a drink. You have no reason to believe that this guy is a drinker, but you know what? He just offed his mom. We'll say that. And again, a lot of weird thoughts about his mom happen in this book. So he goes to the local bar called Serenity or whatever, because of course it's called Serenity. He gets to this bar. He meets this guy named Paul, who is like, he's like, what do you have? And he goes, gin and tonic. Oh, you're not from around here, are you? And it turns out he dresses real funny, which he noticed. Everybody walks around in gray dresses, gray suits, unless you work for the mayor, in which case then you dress up like you're some sort of 1950s silent film villain, and top hats and trench coats, because yeah, I guess it was creepy. I'll give him that. It was kind of creepy, but it does nothing other than to just make the whole world look more or less believable. So while he's talking to this bartender, the bartender, who's talking just like him, by the way, decides he doesn't like him, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a job. I'm going to have you tend my bar. And the guy's like, sure, I'm only here to meet my dad, who you've already said you don't know who he is. But yes, getting a job here working at this bar would be wonderful. So he leaves the bar, going back to his room, thinking, golly gee willikers, how great is life now? And he gets knocked unconscious from behind by somebody. He thinks it's a woman. Turns out later on, it's not. I'll get to that. Dude gets bludgeoned in the back of his head, right, by this assailant. He thinks it's the mayor of the town. Honestly, I believe it was the mayor of the town at the time that the book was written. I think by the end of the book, the author forgot the plot line and changed it out for who it ended up being. And again, I'll get to that. So he passes out, he wakes up, and Paul has found him. Apparently, I mean, it was only a few minute walk from the bar to his room, to his hotel room, because it's a tiny town. So Paul sees him, takes him back to the bar, cleans him up, puts him in a VIP room, and he wakes up the next day there. He goes back to his room, and he thanks Paul. He goes back to his room, showers, and stuff like that. That's where you get the first ham-fisted sex scene, where he's in the shower thinking about Paul and the person that bludgeoned him and how he's going to find his dad. And then he looks down and sees that his penis is erect and decides jerking off is the way to go. And he does, all over his feet. It literally says that in the book. His feet are surrounded by soap suds and sperm. Yeah, yeah, story driven. So after the worst shower on the planet, he goes ahead and gets something to eat, and that's way more information that was required. And he goes and he does his first shift at this bar, right? And at the bar, he serves a few drinks to people. It's real easy because apparently Tom is also an accomplished bartender, although whatever. And this girl shows up. He gets to the bar, he starts serving drinks, and this girl shows up. And of course, she's smoking hot, gorgeous. My name's Stephanie, but everyone here knows me as Alicia because, again, everything is generic. She's gorgeous. She's very. There's no reason for this highly sought after girl to be interested in Tom at all, but she is, and you'll find out why. There's no reason in a minute. She's throwing herself at him. Like I said, this is a teenage boy's weird fantasy. Like, when you hit puberty and it's all your hormones are crazy and everything, you're just all full of, we'll say, spunk. This is the kind of immature little fantasy about how the world should work if you could make things happen. So the girl is shaking her ass at him, wiggling her boobies at him the whole time she's showing him around the bar. And he's like, oh, girls usually don't talk to me like that. But later on in the book, you find out he's had an extensive array of sexual partners. Again, I think the author just lost the plot line and just made it up as he went along. It was very frustrating. So, of course, the bar turns out to be a strip club. And of course, this girl is the hottest girl there who's all interested in him because we all know that strippers are very loyal to one customer. he so he's serving drinks. She goes up on the stage. She does her little dance routine, which takes all of 12 seconds before the whole bar turns into an orgy. Again, no idea that was going to happen. Nothing leads you up to seeing this happening. It's just 1 minute he's serving drinks in a strip club, no big deal. The next minute there's literal, just everybody there is naked and bumping uglies with anybody else that's around. Consent is just assumed. Everybody's going crazy. Dude on dude, girl on girl, guy on girl, girl on guy. Everything, and there's leather, there's bondage, there's all just out of fucking nowhere. This happens, and of course, Stephanie or Alicia or whatever the hell you want to call this plot device walks straight over the Tom, who you hear way too much about his erection, and takes him back to a VIP room where she, of course, has amazing, mind-blowing sex with this guy and falls desperately in love with him to the point where she has him move in with her. Yep, because that's the way these things work out in real life, too. So they're now an item, and he has completely forgotten about his father. He's just so happy that he's got this girl who's gorgeous and wants to have sex more than he does, and everything's working out. This is a wonderful situation. By the way, Tom is 29, 30 years old, and you never find out how old Stephanie is. I like to assume that she's 18 because, well, why not? I think that might be the age of the author. Again, not an insult. It's just it makes sense. This is a teenage fantasy world. Of course, he starts drawing attention from the mayor, and he eventually gets called to the mayor's court. Or to mansion anyway, and when he meets her, she's like, everything that happens here is because of me. I run this shit. For some reason, she's been able to seed the union, which I'm sure Texas and California would love to hear her secret, because nobody has come to check on why. Like I don't know if it tells you what state they're in. I can't remember, but whatever city they're in, whatever town this is, where it's at, it's in America. And if a town tries to cede the union and it doesn't use the currency anymore, it doesn't adhere to the laws anymore, the state or the federal law or anything like that, just all that's thrown out the window. Human trafficking is happening, murder is happening, all this crap is happening, and not one government agency is informed or gets curious, or the governor isn't like, hey, why isn't that town sending taxes in? What's going on? Because this town has been around for decades, okay? Since this lady took over and changed all the things. That's why the money, the American currency, wasn't accepted at the hotel, because there's a new currency that's literally red monopoly money. So yeah, that's how things work in this town. And the mayor tells you what you're gonna do and when you're gonna do it and who's got what job. And if you don't do it, she literally has you flippin' murdered. There's nothing keeping these people in this town. Nothing. There's no gate, there's no supernatural barrier or anything like that. They just don't leave for whatever reason. It's never mentioned. So he's like, I'm here. I'm just looking for my dad, blah, blah, blah. Do you know him? She goes, nope, don't know him. But, as long as you're here, that's fine. You can work at the bar, but, you have to do what I say, yada, yada, yada. And dude he's constantly battling with his inner rage, but he's real meek. It's just, unless he needs to not be, which it's so jarring. It's so poorly done that it's infuriating. So the mayor, after having this conversation with him and everything like that, immediately decides that she's going to fuck him. I'm sorry to swear. I'm really trying not to, but I'm mad. And the mayor all of a sudden is doing the thing where she puts her foot on his crotch and starts rubbing on him. And he's like, "What's going on? I'm so confused." Teenage boy fantasy world. And of course she pulls out this weird like cat o' nine tails or a whip. It doesn't really say. Even the character, he's not really sure if it's a whip or some sort of leather wrapped rod or what. But he's not usually into stuff like this. But hey, the nice mayor lady is all into it. So she beats him for a little bit, and then he has sex with her. And of course, it's mind blowing. I mean, dude is the best she's ever had. Put a pin in that. We'll get back to that later. So he goes back and he's talking to his girlfriend, who supposedly knows, Stephanie knows what's going on in his town, but, oh, why did you leave? Like he had a choice. Like the mayor was like, oh, if you don't want to show up, that's fine. So they have a fight, but it just stops. They have this lovers fight about, you need to be more careful, to all of a sudden apologizing and sexing each other again. Dude's got stamina like a teenager too, which is another clue that makes me think this is written by a teenager. So anyway, they fall asleep. It's the next day, and he's back at the bar, and his father shows up. And he knows it's his father because he's seen him once in a 20-year-old picture, but this guy in front of him is the same thing. Again, the author just didn't have a plot line. I think it was just whatever he decided to have happen when he was sitting there. He didn't take any real world factors into account. It was a 30-year-old picture that he saw of his father, because it was his father, his mother, and him as a baby. He's 29 years old, and he sees his dad, and he looks exactly like the picture. I'm sorry. I know that not anybody, myself and nobody listening to this, looks the same as they did 30 effing years ago. But it looks exactly the same as he does in the picture. Want to know why? Because the author didn't think of it. So he notices him, and his dad is like, no, he doesn't say anything, but he knows it's his dad. His dad talks to the bar owner, and he's all flipped out. His girl, who's a stripper at this bar, gets paid for, goes into the VI room and has sex with someone else. And of course, dude is jealous, but he understands because, while she's his, she's also a working girl, and he respects that. So the end of the night, everyone's clearing out. Of course, she's getting the crap beat out of her by some guy that works for the mayor. He beats the guy up because although he's a meek, indecisive individual, he's also apparently Mike Tyson, and he knocks out this thug that works for the mayor for a living, who's been in more fights than this guy has. I guarantee it. The guy doesn't even fight back. He's smiling at him while this guy's beating his head against the ground. The guy is all hurt. He's all bleeding. Everybody gets dragged to the mayor's office, and the mayor, of course, instead of being mad that this punk killed one of, or, has crippled one of her people, all she says is, "You work for me now, or I'll kill your girlfriend," who the thug beat into, a mild surface, flesh wound type stuff only. She's able to get fixed up by the doctor overnight, literally overnight. The guy, of course, he has to take his place, the guy that beat Stephanie up or whatever, he has to take his place. And in order to do that, he has to slit his throat. The mayor gives him, holds a gun to Stephanie's head and gives him a knife and says, slit his throat, which of course Tom does, no problem. He does lament it a little bit. Oh, golly gee, is this really who I want to be? It's like when you grow up. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, he kills the guy, no problem. And the next day he's supposed to be working for the mayor. But like, what that entails, you never find out because the mayor never calls on him, like ever, until he does something stupid, which happens quite quickly. So the next day, him and Stephanie are back at Stephanie's place, and he's like, I'm going to get us out of here. We need to get out of here right away. And Stephanie's like, all right, cool, gotcha. Let's get out of here. How? And he's like, I don't know, but I'm going to look around and try to find a map and see if I can figure out how to get out of here. And she's like, okay, but the only map in the entire town is in the mayor's office. Go with caution. And so he does. And so while Stephanie is getting clothes and supplies for an adventure to another town, which apparently is on the other side of the ocean, I don't know. Instead of just running and leaving, they decide that they have to do all this prep work. Blah. So he needless to say, he finds the map in the mayor's office because everyone's incompetent, and he goes back to get Stephanie, and she's been captured. They're found out, and how he gets out of it is his dad, who works for the mayor, has been working for the mayor, and apparently is the mayor's husband, the mayor says, either you die or your dad dies, but someone's gonna die. And so the dad shoots himself in the head, and Tom throws a tantrum and passes out. When he wakes up, he decides that's enough. I'm never going to do anything like this again. We're getting the fuck out of here. And he goes back to the mayor's office, finds a gun, confronts the mayor. The mayor also has a gun. He shoots the mayor in the chest or the stomach or something like that. She shoots him in the collarbone, the right collarbone. He's very specific about these things too. He walks on the left side of the street. He looks over his right shoulder. He gets shot in his right shoulder, but that doesn't matter. None of that matters because dude's made of titanium. The mayor is sitting there and she's all like, you're my, and he blows her head off because going from slitting someone's throat to shooting this bitch in the face, not a problem at all. Tom is rugged. He's probably 8 types of special forces. We just haven't gotten to part 2 yet. So he runs back to the house. He gets Stephanie. Stephanie's all like, what's going on? Quickly, damsel, this way. And they go running to these boats that he found on the map, right? Out of 3 boats, 2 are just decrepit garbage pails. 1 is this pristine jetliner type of boat, right? And he just assumes that he's the luckiest guy in the world, and it must have been his dad that put this together. He just feels that. Whatever. So they get to this boat, and while they're running to get to this boat, and all the mayor's thugs are coming after him now, and they're all shooting at him, and he's shooting back, and he takes out a couple of them, and you don't think that they hit him or anything like that. They get onto the boat, and they push off, and they're getting the boat going and stuff like that, and it starts up, and they're traveling down the river, and pew, 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 and, he drops them all. The ones that he don't drop, they run away because oh my God, he's such a good shot. And he turns around and Stephanie's fine, and then she freaks out, and she's like no, and he looks down. He's been shot 3 times in the stomach, and he didn't even notice because of the adrenaline and his drive to protect Stephanie. Because that works. If you really, really want to protect somebody, you can be shot a dozen times, 4 times in this situation, and be able to go as far as you need to go before you bleed out and die. That's just how physics works. That's how the human body works. So he dies on the boat. The end. The entire time, the formatting, there's not, you know how the paragraphs are in a book where you hit tab at the beginning of the paragraph? That doesn't happen once. Not once during the entire book did he tab in a paragraph, which is just a pet peeve of mine, but it's improper, and damn it, tab your paragraphs. Then in between paragraphs, sometimes there'd be a double space, there'd be like a gap in between the paragraphs, and sometimes there wouldn't be, which was really confusing. It was like, what's happening? It made reading it really difficult. The language used is all wrong. Everything is ham-fisted. The plot is so predictable it might as well be on a Nickelodeon skit. It's just bad, like from start to finish, and I hate that. I know how difficult it is to sit down and write a novel. I know that if the author listens to this review, it's going to be hard to listen to, and I'm sorry, man, but I only promised you the truth, and it's very, very. You need an editor, you need an English class, and you need a proofreader. You need to go on Fiverr. Shoot, my wife is an editor. You could hire her if you wanted, but there's a zillion of them out there. You need to find one, and not just a buddy of yours, not just somebody you know. You need to hire a professional editor. If English isn't your first language, I apologize. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you need to have a better grasp of the English language before you try to write again, because this book, everything is wrong. Everything is wrong, from the grammar to the punctuation to the word usage to the syntax to the formatting. Everything is wrong, and it's difficult. It's very difficult. Also, outlines. You need to have a good idea of what your characters are and have an outline from start to finish. You can deviate, but if you deviate, you got to make sure that that line from start to finish matches up. Turns out that the mayor's wife, or that the mayor is really his mother, and she knew he was her son when she had sex with him, but she wanted to know the kind of man he had become. And that's why, again, it's a weird mom thing going on in this book that I did not care for. There's a lot of unnecessary sex scenes that don't add anything to the book other than just catering to the author's fantasy, and I'm just done. I'm sorry. This book is 0 out of 5 stars, and honestly, check it out. If you're curious, if you want to see what I'm talking about, if you really can't, if you don't think that it could be that bad, it's $1 to find out on ebook, free with Kindle Unlimited, or $10 on a paperback form. Check it out and come back into the comment section. Let me know what you think. If you disagree, if you agree, we can lament, we can discuss, we can debate, we can argue. I don't care. I can promise you there'll be no sex scene in between. So anyway, guys and gals, that's going to do it for this book review. I hope everybody's not too mad at me, but hey, integrity-based book reviews is what I do. So hate me for it if you will. I totally understand. As always, though, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comment section below, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. And as always, thanks.